Again, good morning, everyone. Appreciate you taking the time to be here with us. And I am Senate Majority Leader John Flanagan. I'm here working with all of my colleagues, and you see we have an excellent turnout from our conference. Very gratified to be here with you and have the support of our colleagues who represent millions of New Yorkers all across the state of New York. And you can see as the backdrop here, making New York more affordable, 25% tax cut. So I want to focus on a couple of different things, and then we're going to have individual members speak to parts of the plan. Senator Young will give an outline of the plan. Senator Farley, Senator Serino, and Senator Venditto will offer their comments as well. But I think what I want to do is just speak to our priorities and to a degree what are our values in representing our constituents. We're here talking about taxes, about tax policy, about the direction of the state of New York. And as a backdrop, we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to promote economic development. We want to have economic opportunity for all working men and women across the state. We want to have upward mobility. We want to have opportunities for people no matter what their community or venue or their demographic. And that is a thrust of everything that we talk about, both internally and externally. And obviously a critical component of that is what is the tax policy and the tax structure in the state of New York. And we come at this from a different angle. We come at it from a philosophical orientation that we believe that people should have more money in their pockets and the government should have less money of people's money in the government pockets. And having said that, we are looking at this from a different perspective than the New York State Assembly. Very shortly after the governor came out with his executive budget, the New York State Assembly came out with part of their proposal, and one of the main components of it was raising taxes. And at the time we heard that, and I heard that, I was incredulous that given this economic environment, given the competitive nature of the states around us, and given economic policy just generally, how can you possibly do that and say it with a straight face to the taxpayers? So we are focusing, how do we give more money back to New Yorkers? How do we create jobs? How do we give revenue to the state of New York to fund the priorities and programs that we have? So we want to talk about the middle class. We want to talk about people who have had their taxes reduced, but not enough. We want to talk about a 25% tax cut. We want to talk about small business and the personal income tax. We want to talk about estate taxes. We want to talk about agriculture. We want to talk about energy policy. And the more time we take to do that with painstaking details so the public understands, I think the better position we're going to be in. Having said that, that is going to be our focus in the one House budget. That's going to be our focus in individual pieces of legislation, and that is going to be the crux of what we offer in terms of budget negotiations as we look forward to not only an on-time budget, but that one is fair and in the best interest of taxpayers across the state of New York. With that, I'd like to introduce Senator Kathy Young, who is the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, to offer comments on details of the plan. Senator Young.
Thank you very much, Leader. Good morning. Our hardworking taxpayers in New York State need and deserve relief, and that's really the basis of this plan that we're putting forward today. We have a big middle income tax break. We are calling it 25 by 25, and it's real tax relief for middle income families. The history of the middle income tax reduction that we did a few years ago is that it was first enacted in 2011. And then we extended it in the 2013-14 budget. These rates were reduced from 6.85% to 6.65% and then to 6.45%, but they are set to expire in the 2018 tax year when they are scheduled to revert back to the 6.85% rate. As a result of that, taxes for middle income taxpayers will increase by $700 million, and that is simply unacceptable. Our proposal that we're putting forward today would provide a broad-based tax cut that would not just preserve existing tax cuts, but would actually reduce current taxes paid by middle-class taxpayers for single filers with taxable incomes between $20,000 and $150,000, heads of households with taxable income between $30,000 and $225,000, and married joint filers with taxable incomes between $40,000 and $300,000. The first reduction would occur for the tax year 2018 by preserving the reduced middle income tax rate in the first year, and actually it would phase down each year until 2025, when the middle class tax rate would be reduced by 25%. So that's the 25 by 25. The reduction is adjusted for inflation so that it will move along with cost of living increases in income, and this rate reduction will save nearly 4 million middle income taxpayers an average of $897, and that's significant. Over 770,000 small businesses will realize tax savings under our plan. So in total, over the full period, it would save $3.5 billion to middle-income taxpayers when fully phased in. The second component has to do with making indexing of personal income tax brackets, benefit recapture, and standard deduction permanent. And the history is the indexing of the personal income tax brackets, tax table benefit recapture, and the standard deduction to the rate of inflation were first enacted in December of 2011. And again, we extended this tax relief in 2014. We are scheduled to stop indexing after 2017, and indexing stops bracket creep, which drives taxpayers crazy. But basically what that means is that it bumps taxpayers into a higher tax bracket just by virtue of getting cost of living adjustments in their wages. So under our proposal, we would make indexing permanent, and all personal income taxpayers could potentially see a benefit from this proposal. Everyone. And the savings would be $355 million in fiscal year 2019. Another component is that has to do with private pension and retirement income exclusion increase. Many seniors struggle to afford to pay their bills, and they deserve to be able to enjoy their golden years. Our proposal would increase the exempt amount of private pensions and retirement income from the current level of $20,000, and that's been in place since 1981, right, Senator Farley? Right. And we would increase it to $40,000 by 2019. In 2017, the exclusion amount would increase to $27,000, to $34,000 in 2018, and $40,000 by 2019. And this proposal will reduce taxes for over 375,000 seniors in this state, with a savings of $275 million when it's fully phased in. Another component has to do with the personal income tax exclusion for small businesses and farms and small corp rate reduction. And as we know, small businesses and agriculture are the cornerstones of our state's economy. And as we know, the Senate sponsored a personal income tax exemption for small businesses and small farms in 2014. It was enacted, and the exemption is equal to 5% of net income in 2016 and beyond. To qualify, the business must be a sole proprietor or farm, regardless of how the business is structured, and it needs to have less than $250,000 in net business income and employ at least one employee. Our proposal today will eliminate the employee qualification and will raise the income eligibility threshold from $250,000 to $500,000 in small business and farm income. It will also increase the personal income tax exemption from 5% to 20% for farm income and from 5% to 15% for net business income of small business. In addition, this proposal would reduce the corporate franchise tax business income rate for small businesses with an income of less than $500,000 over a 2-year period. This proposal will cut taxes for over 9,000 farms and nearly 1.3 million small businesses with a savings of $200 million in fiscal year 18, $350 million in 19, and $494 million in the year 2020. And finally, or not finally, but we're getting close, one of the other areas that we want to focus on has to do with the 18A surcharge. And as we know, in 2009 and 10, the Senate Democrats were in power, and they raised the 18A surcharge by 500%. Since that time, we have been trying to get it fully eliminated. So this year, We would like to eliminate it by 2016, December 31st of this year, instead of this coming year. And we think that's very important to the consumers in New York State, seniors on fixed incomes, small businesses, and just regular consumers who have to pay their utility rates. And finally, we would change the estate tax for small businesses and farms. And in 2014, the estate tax was amended to increase the exclusion amount from $1 million to going up to $2 million for people dying in the state fiscal year of 2014-15, and it goes up from there. Our proposal will allow estates that include farm operations or include small business property where the value of the farm operations or small businesses are a majority of the estate to have an exclusion amount equal to the federal exclusion amount starting April 1st, 2016, which is currently $5.45 million for 2016, with a savings of $70 million in annual savings, and actually $210 million in cumulative savings by 2020. So that's our plan, and we feel very strongly that this will provide the significant tax relief that the people of New York State deserve and need.
Thank you, Senator Young. See, when you get to stand where I am, you can go in broad strokes and not so much in all the details. When you chair finance, you actually have to know what all the numbers are. But our next speaker is the co-dean of our conference. Having served 40 years in the New York State Senate, of course, with distinction, local Senator Hugh Farley, who, and I'm just going to put this in context very quickly, what you see and what you hear is a reflection of what we discuss in our conference. Whether it's agriculture or state tax, this is an amalgamation of people's individual ideas and what we're hearing from our constituents. This next proposal comes from the author of the last time this law was changed, Senator Farley.
Thank you very much, John. You know, back in 1977, when I was first elected, I wrote a bill to exempt private pensions. And I later on became the first chairman of the Aging Committee, and needless to say, put that bill out. We got it passed in a one-house bill, and then it goes into the budget. Senior citizens are vital contributors to our communities and families, and I believe that reducing this tax burdens on seniors will help encourage retirees to stay in New York State. Our tax relief proposal here will provide a better measure of parity between government and private pensions. Government pensions, including federal pensions, military pensions, state pensions, municipal, teacher pensions, they're all fully exempt from income tax in New York State. However, the retirement income from private employment, including pensions, annuities, 401ks, KEOs, and IRAs, are only partially exempted. This exemption went in 1981, and it was at $20,000. Has never been raised since. This first, however, this amount has never been adjusted. If it had been adjusted, it would be up to $52,000. Our proposal would increase the amount of the private pension income. The current exemption is $20,000. It would be raised in 3 stages: to $27,000 in 2016, to $34,000 in 2017, and to $40,000 in 2018. The Senate passed this unanimously last year. Going forward here, the fiscal impact will be $136 million in 2017-18, $224 in 2018-19, and $275 when fully phased in. The Consumer Price Index exemption threshold was set in 1981. In today's dollars, as I told you, it would be $52,000. You know, this is such an important piece of legislation, which is socially important and economically important. These seniors are taking their pensions and fleeing to Florida and other states that do not tax it, and we want to keep them here where they pay taxes, contribute to our community, and I think are needed here. You know, as we go forward here, in 2000, let me just say this. This proposal, incidentally, is supported in the Assembly by Assemblyman Magnarelli, who I chair a major subcommittee review with, a joint committee, and I think it's well received. When this was passed, editorials throughout this state praised the legislature for doing this, because needless to say, it affected them and almost everybody else with a private pension. And I think that my colleagues and I, we need a little praise, and this is something that can really make a difference, not only for New York State, but bring us into keeping our seniors here and from fleeing the state. I'm very pleased to say that my conference has supported this, and I think it's a terrific step forward. And thank you very much. John?
Thank you, Senator Farley. Now, we just heard from the dean of our conference, one of our newest members, but a woman who has already served with distinction and is chair of the Aging Committee, Senator Sue Serino.
Thank you, Leader. And Senator Farley, I have big shoes to fill. As representatives, all of us here today are working to transform our state, to get it back on track. And we're doing that by cutting taxes, incentivizing businesses, and creating jobs. We're working to not only attract people to our state, but to encourage them to stay, to plant roots, and to invest in New York and make it their home. However, as chair of the Senate's Aging Committee, I am finding that all too often a critically important group is being left out of the conversation, and that's our seniors. All across this state, senior citizens are living on fixed incomes. I hear every day from older New Yorkers who are concerned about rising costs, about paying their taxes, affording their prescriptions, and making ends meet. Today, I am proud to be a member of a conference that recognizes this and taking the extra step to make our seniors a priority. The Senate Republicans have advanced a smart proposal to exempt from state taxes private pensions and retirement income of up to $40,000. Phased in over 3 years, this proposal would raise the threshold from the current $20,000, a threshold that hasn't been lifted since 1981. The proposal would save 377,000 seniors an average of $361 in the first year alone. That's a huge amount of money to our seniors. A lot has changed in the last 35 years, including the cost of living. Our seniors have spent their lives building the communities that we know and love. As a state, we owe it to them to make New York a place where they can afford to truly enjoy the fruit of that labor. Today, we're going beyond rhetoric to help make that a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Serino. And last but by no means least, another first-term member of our conference who hails from the same island that I live on, and God knows we know things about utility rates. So Senator Venditto wants to talk about the 18A surcharge.
Leader, thank you so much, and thank you for saying I'm not the least. I appreciate that. Good morning, everybody. I want to thank the leader, of course, and members of the Majority Conference for joining with us today, and each and every one of you for being here to cover this very important event. You know, myself as the Consumer Protection Chair in the Senate, like all my colleagues, I'm constantly being asked, Mike, what can you do to ease the burden on our taxpayers? What can you do to make sure that good people aren't leaving the state? And I think the answer lies right here. This conference is analyzing the $14 billion worth of taxes that were imposed on us at the turn of the decade, and we're figuring out where to make cuts. Now, all of us agree that government needs money to fund services and programs for our residents, but it starts to get unreasonable at a certain point. And when you talk about the 18A energy tax surcharge, it is a very unreasonable tax that has been imposed on us for years now. You know, every time a consumer or a business flicks on a light switch, under that, you get taxed. Every time a resident turns the heat or the air conditioning on in their home to keep a loved one warm, you get taxed. It's about time that we see this tax sunset. The proposal, as it stands now, is to have it end at the end of 2017. We are proposing, as a Senate majority, that it sunset and end and fade away for good at the end of 2016. So we're calling on our colleagues across the state to join us in this endeavor. And Leader, again, I thank you for taking the necessary steps to keep our good people here in New York State. Not only that, but make sure that they can prosper here in our home state.
Thank you, Senator Venditto. And I'll just wrap up by thanking all of my colleagues. Frankly, any one of our members, I see Senator Amador, DeFrancisco, Bonisic, Little, Griffo, Akshar, Lanza, Croce, Larkin, Martins, Marty Golden hanging out in the back, Ranzenhofer, Funky, O'Mara, Murphy, Gallivan, Ritchie, Marcione, Marcelino. See that? I got all the names right without even, all right? They're all critical to what we do in terms of advocacy on behalf of the people we represent. So while you heard from 4 different speakers, Senator Boyle has showed up fashionably late. Phil, it's good to see you here as well. Okay. You didn't want to miss all the excitement. But, you know, these, as we go into the budget negotiations, we will have our one House resolution on the floor on Monday. You will see a lot of what's contained in today's presentation in that resolution. And we look forward to, frankly, doing good work on behalf of the people of the state of New York in a timely fashion. Yes, Jim.
So the top rate on New Yorkers reporting over $1 million in income is right now 8.82%, and that's going to reset to 6.85 at the end of next year. You haven't mentioned that in this package. What is your plan for that bracket, million or more?
Well, actually, I think it's 2 years. I don't think it's, my understanding, well, whether it's next year or the following year, you know, our orientation is we are looking to provide economic and tax relief, frankly, for everybody. Now, one of the things that gets lost in a lot of the discussion that takes place is we have a very progressive tax structure in New York right now. What I want to do and what my colleagues want to do, we want to create jobs. We want to create economic development and come up with a structure so that we can have robust discussions about how do we provide tax relief for everyone. And whether you make a lot of money or whether you make no money, and frankly, the people who are at the lower end of the income scale, they get a lot of relief, which they deserve and are entitled to. But our whole philosophy is government should play a role in people's lives, but not run their lives. And whether that's in the form of revenue or receipts or anything like that, we have to strike a balance. Senator Marcelino chairs education. We're trying to find education funding in a very robust way for schools all across the state of New York. The more we do to create jobs, the more we can generate revenue for the state of New York. And if we do it in an appropriate fashion, we can have that discussion about tax relief for everyone.
Will these surcharges, you know, the 09 then renewed surcharges, do you expect from the top rate for it to reset or subside completely? Or do you intend to use some of the revenue from partially renewing that surcharge to fund the tax cuts for the middle income that you're talking about here?
Well, I think let's start with our primary intention. Our primary intention is to get enacted what we're discussing here today. We will have those discussions, but I'm just telling you in a general way, and I think Senator Young wants to offer a comment that, again, our orientation is how do we provide relief for everybody? We'll have those discussions, most certainly.
So when this is truly implemented, though, if my math is correct, it's like $4.5 billion. So wouldn't you have to cut something from the budget to afford it? And what are your priorities for cutting? Are there areas of waste or things that could be eliminated? Okay, please.
I'm glad you're asking about how do you pay for it. We anticipated that you may ask that question. But basically, it's through a combination of spending restraint and actually tax revenues. So back in the fiscal year 2006 and 7, state operating funds have been used, since then, have been used to measure state spending. And from 06-07 to 2014-15, the average spending growth has been 3.2%. But as you know, we have been under this self-imposed 2% spending cap. And because of that fact, we actually, over that time period, have saved $23 billion in savings to the state. So that's the fiscal restraint. When you add on top the tax receipts growth from the year 2011-12 through fiscal year 15-16, all funds tax receipts have averaged 4.3% in growth. And so when you put that together, that provides the funding necessary to pay for this tax relief that is so important to the people of New York State.
Growth has to continue, though. We can't
Well, you know
have
what,
a recession.
Karen, let me go back, because respectfully, I don't agree with the underlying premise of your question. The automatic assumption is that we have to cut. If we do things the right way, and create an environment where we can actually grow the economy, we really shouldn't have to have those types of discussions. And I know someone will say, well, that's Pollyanna, that's not wise economic policy. That's not what I actually believe, and I think that's what our members want to focus on. We should be able to have discussions about what are we doing on business regulations? What are we doing on small business tax cuts? Senator Amador has been outspoken on things like workers' comp and unemployment insurance. It's tax policy for sure, but it's a whole bevy of other things. So we believe that if we invest wisely and we take prudent action, that the discussion will be about how do we properly fund programs as opposed to cutting them.
And in my proposal, incidentally, instead of people fleeing the state, they'll be staying here and paying taxes on the remainder of their pensions, their IRAs, their TIOs, and everything else.
And they're all going to live in Schenectady.
Senator, I just want to ask you, would you have anything in your one House proposal that's either 421A or similar to that? I know that developers, at least in New York City, are very eager to get something done about that since it expired.
We are having ongoing discussions internally. We had a series of internal conference committee reports today, Monday and Tuesday as well. We have not finalized what will be in our one House resolution. And I know, Zach, you were excited to know what's going to be in there. But that, particularly in the area of housing, there are so many components to that: supportive housing, affordable housing, what type of tax relief should be out there. And by the way, let's be clear. When we talk about housing, it is not just about the city of New York. Every one of my colleagues up here cares very deeply. So when we are going to invest in whatever it may be in terms of housing, it's got to be statewide. It's got to be a macro approach. And certainly the issues affecting the city of New York are ones that we care very deeply about. Certainly Senator Golden, Senator Lanza, our colleague Senator Felder. So I can't pinpoint anything right now, and until such time as we put together the final components of our resolution.
Senator, will your one House budget at all address the minimum wage?
Yes.
How can you shed some light on this?
We will have, there's no resolution on that. I'm not going to offer comments that I can't back up. We are having ongoing discussions. Our members have raised a myriad of concerns. They want, I'm going to go back. I'm going to be repetitive because I think there's an inherent value. You listen to these facts time and time again. Our members believe in economic opportunity for all working men and women across the state of New York. Our members believe that we should have a deliberative legislative process, not a wage board, not executive overreach, and that we should be having hearings and having discussions as we did the last time the minimum wage was raised. That was a byproduct of negotiations between the Assembly, the Senate, and the Executive, which are ongoing now. And we have members in our conference raising a wide variety of issues. People feel that the small business tax cuts are not anywhere near enough to offset what's been offered by the governor. People have concerns about regional differences. People have concerns about the fact that we have done nothing in the area of reducing business regulations. We're focusing on one side of the ledger, which we should. We should, but we have to have a lot of other discussions. I can't offer to say exactly what will be in that resolution, because that's why we have conference. And we're going to have discussions on that subject and others, whether it's housing or other significant issues.
Do you feel like your conference is being maybe a little unfairly squeezed on the issue, though? I mean, the governor's out there on this RV tour across the state. He's named the campaign after his late father. Some of your members are actually being targeted in digital ads on the minimum wage issue. Do you feel like, you're just being squeezed so much that you have to have someone get in on this?
No. We have...
On our tax plan,
Thank you, Kelly. Why don't you...
I guess the point is, if you get this tax plan, does that make the minimum wage more palatable for the conference?
No, these are, from where I sit, working with our colleagues, they are separate issues, separate and distinct. We'll have a healthy debate on the tax plan, and you can clearly see we have a much different orientation than the New York State Assembly. The minimum wage, like any other issue, paid family leave, whatever it may be, housing, all those things can and should stand on their own merit. So with regard to the taxes, I'm not looking at this as, one thing for another or a trade-off.
So the governor is proposing essentially a tax increase to pay for family leave. So you would be okay with that? You're talking about...
As to Kelly's point, I'm more than happy to take some questions.
You're proposing a tax cut today.
Correct.
And the governor's proposing a tax increase to pay for family leave. Are you okay with that?
No, we are, like these other subjects, we are having ongoing discussions about paid family leave. And when, in an abstract sense, everyone gets it. Everyone's got a friend or a family member. Everyone can understand whether it's maternity leave or a sick friend or someone who's a loved one in the family. That is an easy thing to understand. But when you start drilling down on the details, what does it actually mean? Is it paid for by the employer? Is it paid for by the employee? How long should someone have to work for an organization before they're eligible? Is it eligible or is it applicable to every business in the state of New York, regardless of how many employees you have? Those are questions that our members have been researching and asking, looking at states like California, looking at states like New Jersey, looking at states like Rhode Island, and seeing what's out there because they have a track record. And I think our members are highly sympathetic to that issue, but to suggest that we're just going to blithely go along right now with what the governor has proposed, what had transpired, some of the proposals in the past were, I guess, not as robust or not as progressive. Some of the things that have come out now, one person starts, another person one-ups, another person one-ups. And we feel like those are very important discussions, but again, these are things that we will resolve internally and reflect that not only in terms of how we advance things next week, but what we do in terms of the hardcore budget negotiations between now and the end of the month.
How will you reflect in your One House your coalition partners' plan for paid family, the IDC?
I am happy to represent that we have a terrific working relationship with Senator Klein and his conference. They have joined us in our budget conference committees internally, have offered a lot of comments, and Jimmy, when Leader Klein and our conference coalesce behind something, I promise I will be the first to let you know.
Senator, you mentioned before, when the Democrats had control of the Senate and they did all those increases in the fiscal crisis, that it created a great burden on all New Yorkers. Your current proposal looks like it's affecting, it results in hundreds of dollars of savings to families in most areas?
No.
What would it be to? And is it enough to counteract what has gone on in the last several years?
Oh, my goodness. So let's put it this way. I think if you look at what we have proposed, we have done it in a very fiscally sound, reasonable way. We haven't come in here and cavalierly said that $3.5 billion is going to be cut today. We've done it prudently. We've done it with phase-ins. We've done it with input from our members, small business community. So I think we have laid out a plan that affects millions of New Yorkers. Just the middle class tax cut alone, 25 by 25, that's 4 million people. Senator Farley's proposal is over 375,000 people. You look at the estate tax, that part of our obligation is try and find ways to get out to the public so that they understand what exactly is there. We should have an estate tax that is tied to the federal level. We've made changes in the past. We're advancing that even more. So, Mike, I would say this is a $3.5 billion plan that will benefit millions of New Yorkers. This is not isolated to one group in particular. So, because there's some overlap, whether you're a senior, or it's the estate tax, or the PIT piece, or small business, that ties into the middle class tax code as well. So I think utilities, yeah. Utilities affects everybody. Doing that this year, that's $125 million alone. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time.